Hello everybody, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to show you how to make this Quilters star card. It's based on a quilting star. Those of you who may sew or quilt will recognize the pattern. But the nice thing about it is it's a really good way of using up all the scraps of designer series paper that you may have. Those of you who watch my videos often know I'm always joking. If it's not just a hair's breadth of a slither, oh, I'm going to keep that and use that for another project. So in the Unbounded Beauty paper pack that I had all these pieces that just, I mean, there's nothing you can use that for really, or is there? And likewise with the 24-26 in colour designer series 6x6 pack, I had all these little pieces of extra stuff, you know, nice whole 6x6 sheet, and then all these little pieces kept. And this is what I used to make this card. This is the one we're going to use today. Now, I'd seen a few of them, and actually I think the last time I made it, quite a few years back, we used 6-inch strips, and I realized if you do that, you cut an awful lot off the far side of the paper. You'll see that as we go along. So I thought, I wonder if you can make it with just a 4-inch piece, because quite often I will cut my designer series paper into 4-inch strips, because then they layer onto a card front, and hooray, successfully, yes they do. So when we make this card in a few minutes, I will show you how to do it with just 4-inch strips of paper rather than needing 6. I don't think you can go smaller than a 4-inch piece, but I was quite relieved that there was only a little bit of jiggery pokery to be done. So I'll pop these off to one side and I'll bring in the ingredients. So it's a piece of 8.5 by 5.5 cardstock, scored at 4 1/4, and this is the Pretty in Pink. So we'll fold that, and this is the layer that goes on the front, and it is 3 1/4 by 5 1/4. So it layers the 1/4 inch smaller up and down, but it's only 3 3/4 wide, because the piece of white cardstock that we build the star onto is a square of basic white that is 3 by 3. This one, because it's dark, has the lovely little extra piece of basic white on the inside, so you can see what you're writing. The Pretty in Pink is fairly light enough that you wouldn't need to. You could if you wanted to. But anyway, back to the card in hand. And then what we need to do is chevron the bottom of this, because we've got quite a few chevron shapes. And what you normally would do is cut up the middle of this and cut from one side to the other. But I was recently doing a class, and so my ladies didn't have to guesswork that. I made them these handy dandy little templates. And then it suddenly occurred to me, well, why don't I keep a template? It's not that difficult. It's just a little piece of basic white cardstock. So I'm going to use that. So I'm going to cut up to the point, and then from the other corner up to the point, and you can, oops, that is one of the pieces of dimensionals that I clearly did not clean away properly from when I was making this. So there we have it. I don't know why that's got a fuzzy little corner, but we'll just neaten that off. So we've got a nice chevroned piece. So it's 5 1/4 tall and it's 3 1/4 wide, because like I said, the square is 3 by 3. And what we're going to do is we are going to add the strips to this piece. So I'm just going to bring in my silicone mat, and what I also did was from corner to corner I just drew a pencil line. So we're going to pick a pattern, any pattern, and just lie it up against that line. And you see it doesn't really make it as far as the end, which I think when I had learned a long time ago to do this, that's why they gave us the 6-inch strips. But Scrimpers Anonymous here, I found a way of not needing that. So a 4-inch strip with just a little piece peeking out each side. So we're going to line those up either side of the pencil line, and then we're going to put the other pieces in of patterns that we haven't used. And this one I'm going to tuck under the top one up to that pencil line. So it just goes under, because it's sort of weaving. And then the other one goes under the bottom piece on the right hand side, but again comes up and meets in the middle. So you now have a nice little woven square piece. And then what I'm going to do is bring in my glue. You can use rolling adhesive, but I found it was easier just to move it if needs be. So just put it, honestly, just a little slither of glue and make sure that stays up against the line. And then this one, put just a little line of glue and then eyeball that they meet at the top. Oops, and don't have sticky on your fingers. And then we're just going to give it a quarter turn, holding the piece in the middle as still as we can. I mean, it doesn't matter if you move it, you can always put it back. It's just easier if it doesn't go anywhere. So we'll stick the left hand piece down and then the right hand piece. And I found that the less glue I used, the better it was. It didn't try and squidge out. So we're just going to do that all the way around. So put the left hand piece down, a nice little thin line of glue, and put the right hand piece down. And you'll see now the way it's worked. This piece here at the bottom is smaller than the piece at the top, but it does not matter because we're actually going to be putting a square onto that, which is the way that it would be done if it was made with fabric in a quilt. So that's the last line, and that's all of the pieces. So it's stuck on now. And then what we need, the other pieces that we need, are 4 little squares of basic white cardstock, and they are 3/4 of an inch each. And while the glue on here is drying, I'm actually going to bring in the banner that I cut using the stylish shapes. And I have a greeting. My greeting actually says a little note, and it came out of the March 2022 paper pumpkin kit, but you can put any greeting on. I just felt a long skinny greeting worked better than a fat one, because you don't want to fill up this area too much, and a long skinny greeting would work really nicely. So the greeting that you want to use, of course, would be up to you, but I would recommend a long skinny one. So I am just going to ink up the stamp, and I'm using the Summer Splash, which is the color of this turquoisey blue color, and add it to the banner. So that's all of the stamping done, and by now this should all be dry. So again, I'm just going to, actually I'm not going to bring in my snips because sometimes there's a little bit of glue. So I'm actually going to use my, what I call sticky scissors, which can get a little bit grubby, and then I just wash them, but then it doesn't get my snips when I'm trying to cut paper all gunked up. So we're just cutting off the overhanging corners. So there is an inconsistency to the size of them, but it won't matter, as you will see in just a moment's time. So took those off to one side because they're sticking to me because there was a little bit of glue on them. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use rolling adhesive on this one, but I'm going to do it again on the silicone mat. So if I overhang anywhere, it doesn't put sticky onto my work surface. So just a few little pieces of sticky on the back of those. And then what we're going to do is put these into the corners. So now you see why it didn't particularly matter that the pieces didn't make it to the end, and even if it didn't make it to the end, that they weren't even, because they're all going to be snaffled away under these pieces. And this is what, of course, then gives the star its shape. So there we have it. And then on a recent video, this was the star that I had made. On a recent video, I saw someone had put it, I think it was Lynn Dunn, had put it through an embossing folder, and I thought, what an absolutely lovely idea. So I got out one of my embossing folders, and I do think it needs to be sort of a busy pattern where it's pretty even, the same sort of pattern across. This one is actually Softly Sophisticated, which I do believe was a celebration. But, you know, you don't have to have it. It gives the star its best shape. So then we'll just put it into the folder and close it down. And then by the power of television and Blue Peter, here is one that I made earlier, and it's embossed, and it just sort of fastens those little edges down a little bit. So we don't need the silicone mat and the conveniently pushed to one side little sticky pieces. So now we've just got the fun of assembling the card. So we're going to stick the star onto the layer, and you'll remember this was a 3x3 square and a 3.5 inch. Ooh, you know, that's got a little piece on there, so we'll just cut that slither off, a slither that I'm not going to keep. Wow, look at that. So we'll put a 3-inch square onto a 3.25 inch piece. We will attach this to the front of the card. So we just have to make it even on both sides, and then the top and the bottom, because it's 5.25 going on a 5.5 inch card base, just fits its normal 1/4 inch difference. And then I'll bring in some dimensionals and just put a couple of those on the back. And then that can go in the middle of there. And then last but not least, I will bring in the shimmery gems, the 24-26 in colour shimmer gems, because they coordinate beautifully with all the colours that are in this particular card. So I think I'll put a small little blue one, which is of course Summer Splash. But then down at the bottom, I think I'm actually going to put Pretty in Pink. Put those two there. And that's it. That's the card made. So there are two the same, slightly the same. The little gems are in a different place. And that's the one I made using the 24-26 designer series paper of the in colours. But there you have it. So quick and easy. It's a great way to use scraps. It's a great way to use scraps that are only 4 inches, because like you saw, we hide the corners anyway. If you like what you've seen, please subscribe, ring the bell. It keeps my algorithm busy and I can bring more videos like this to you. I thank you in advance if you think it's worthy of a thumbs up. All the directions and dimensions, of course, will be on my blog. I always mention that. If you have a question or a comment, pop it in the box below. And in the meantime, thanks so much for watching.